Have I told y'all this? I'm Nelda Spell Mitchell, and I want to tell you that in these two books, 2 volumes of one book, the stories are not necessarily in order as they happen, and so I'm just going to skip around and tell you stories that may not be in order. This is a story that I'm going to read now. Happened when Dennis and I had been married about 10 years or more. And it's about a chair. Chairs. A chair story. And this is a picture of Dennis sitting in a little cheap folding chair. And that's what I'm talking about, those little chairs you could buy at the dollar store. Well, to understand this story, you need to know that Dennis Mitchell learned most of his fishing and camping skills from his brothers. His daddy didn't fish too much, but his brothers did. And the main fishing activity was called trot line, T-R-O-T, trot line fishing. When trot line fishing, the fisherman likes to stay overnight near the stream for the convenience of baiting the hooks and checking for caught fish at frequent intervals. Even though they were 20 and 13 years older, Tony was 20 years older than Dennis, and Rex was 13 years older than Dennis, but they included Dennis in their activities when Dennis was growing up. Their number one rule was, when you're fishing, carry only the essentials. The best example was the uses of the pocket knife. It was the only tool carried, for it could be used to clean fish, spread mayonnaise, spread peanut butter, spear the fish when they were frying in a pan. They could open tin cans. They could peel tomatoes and many other things. Since their main objective was to catch fish, amenities for camping were almost zero. Now you need to know that my river experiences were zero. I knew nothing. The first time Dennis carried our children to me on an overnight camping fishing trip to the Leaf River. Don was a toddler, Dale was 9, and Beverly was 7. Dennis told me to pack a changing of clothes for each of us, and he would take care of everything else. He also told me that we were going to camp on a sandbar on the back side of the gun place where he rented the fields to farm from Mrs. Gunn. And since we were only 10 miles from the house, we could run back home if we needed something else. Well, we threw everything in Dennis's John boat that was on a boat trailer behind our old World War II Jeep. We hopped into the Jeep about mid-morning on a beautiful sunny July Saturday in 1965. I knew the gun place was bordered for half a mile or more by the Leaf River, and that the biggest field was on a bluff about 100 feet or more above the river. And with this in mind, I asked Dennis, how were we going to get down to reach the river? He assured me that was no problem. We would go down an old logging road through the woods down to the river. Well, we did. That road was almost straight down. Only the grace of God prevented the Jeep and the boat from flipping over. At the bottom of the hill, there was room to park on a fairly level spot, but no sand at all on that side of the river. The water was very deep on that side, so we had to put everything in the boat and cross to the other side where the water was shallow around a beautiful sandbar. It really was nice, pretty white sand. Oh, and so big. The water was warm and only a few inches deep around the sandbar, and it gradually would get deeper. And it was a perfect place for Don to play, and Dale and Bever would venture out into the deeper water to swim. I sat with Don. Dennis set out trot lines and caught bait to catch fish that night. They were trying to catch catfish. Oh, we had a wonderful time. I dare not move out of arm's reach of Don. He had a fantastic time. He played in the water, in the wet sand, in the dry sand, and ran a while, and then he would start all over. Well, I could either sit flat on the ground or stand, because any stumps that I could use for us two were in the wooded area too far from the children. Oh, I needed a chair. Why didn't I think of bringing our folding yard chairs? We had a half dozen yard chairs. They were made out of aluminum tubes with plastic webbing. They were so neat. They were lightweight, easy to move. If it rained on them, they got wet. They dried quickly. And they were cheap. I thought if I ever go camping again, I would carry each of us a chair. Then I thought, we were only 10 miles from the house. I'll run home and get some. But there were 3 big obstacles. Number 1, I could not leave the children unattended. And number 2, I could not get them across to the Jeep without the boat, because the water was too deep on the other side. And I was afraid to drive that Jeep up that cliff that was too steep. And if I got up it, I would sure enough be afraid to drive back down it again. And Dennis said he absolutely would not stop baiting trot lines to go home for chairs. And that's not all he said. His main oratory theme was that people had camped from cave dwellers until now, and no one, absolutely no one, had ever had a chair. And he was not going back home for chairs. Well, we had a good time, chairs or not, and we all wanted to go back, and Dennis said that he would carry us. A few weeks later, he did take us. This time, I threw in a few extra things that would make life more civilized, such as knives to spread peanut butter, and knives to spread mayonnaise, and knives to peel tomatoes, and paper towels, and newspaper that made good disposable tablecloths. These were all out of Dennis's sight because I put them in a brown paper bag under our clothes, and he didn't know about it. But on top of everything in the boat, I put an aluminum folding chair for each one of us, and then put the icebox on top of it to weigh it down so they wouldn't blow off. Dennis saw them. My, oh my. You would have thought that I had just loaded the kitchen sink. So I said, there's no problem. I would just leave his chair at the house, and I took one off. Well, you know what happened. Just as soon as the chairs got on the campsite, guess who sat in one? To go down the pecking order, Don had to sit in a lap the entire trip. Dennis was quick to admit that having a chair was better than having already sliced bread. So the next time he went on a fishing camping trip with his brothers, Tony and Rex, and their friend Ellie Hendon, each prepared with their essential pocket knife. That's all they took was their pocket knife. But Dennis did load a chair for each one of them. When Tony saw the chairs, he came unglued and gave the same speech to Dennis that Dennis had given to me. So Dennis did to Tony what I had done to him. He picked up one chair off the load and left it at home. But guess who sat on a stump? Pecking order worked again. Tony was the oldest, so he sat in a chair. Till his dying day, Tony always had extra folding chairs on his pickup, whether he was fishing or not. Everywhere he went, he had chairs on his pickup. He had found out they were very essential, more essential than poles and bait. And this is Tony's picture right in here. It doesn't show him sitting in a chair, but he's out in the woods fishing.